Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's College Wise webinar. Today's topic would be all about choosing college majors. My name is Theo, and I'm a part of the marketing team here at College Wise, and I'll be your host for tonight. As I let more people pop in, I'll actually love to learn where everyone's coming in from tonight. I'm personally from the Midwest, so more specifically, Wichita, Kansas. So if we have some Midwestern families here, I'll love to know. Okay. Awesome, Seattle, California. Nice. All right, we'll just go ahead and jump to the next slide. Before I introduce you to our speakers, I'd like to actually start up our first poll of the night. So I'll go ahead and get that started. And for this poll is just for us to get to know the audience so we can better cater our content to you. So I'll just leave this poll up for just a couple minutes, and I'll actually like to talk a little bit about College Wise. So we just go to the next slide. So we're College Wise. We were founded in 1999, and we have been in the industry for around 25 years now. We have a robust team of 70 counselors, formal admission officers, and lifelong educators who have been successfully guided 30,000 students to the college admissions. In fact, 9 out of 10 students have been accepted to their top 3 schools here at College Wise, and College Wise has actually been rated the #1 undergraduate college firm. In 2013 in Trustpilot. This really goes to show the expertise of our amazing counselors and how we love to put in the work into helping families navigate the overwhelming college admissions process. So that's just a little bit about College Wise. And really, before I pass it on to our speakers, I'd like to go through some housekeeping. So we'll just go to the next slide. So this webinar will be recorded. You will be getting a copy of the recording via email tomorrow. And also avoid using the raise hand feature as we won't be really utilizing that tonight. And if you have any questions throughout the session at all, please pop it into our Q&A tab below, and we'll try to get through as many as we can at the end. So that's pretty much all I have for y'all. So I'll go ahead and pass it on to our lovely speakers for more introductions.
The usual, I'm muted. You know, we've only been on Zoom for like 5 years. It's okay. Hi, everyone. So glad you are here tonight. My name's Anita, and I am in the Chicago area. So, you know, Theo and I love to talk about the Midwest. I've been with College Wise for about 3 years now. And before this, I worked on the college side, mostly as an academic advisor. So I used to help students on the college side think about majors and careers and classes and all that good stuff. So I love this topic. It's actually my favorite topic. I actually don't think the answer is as important as the process and just trying to figure out and navigate, like, who are you? What are you most excited about? What kind of direction are you going in? And that's why I love this topic. I just think there's a lot of juicy pieces in there where we get to really dive in with the student and help them figure out, like, what is it that motivates them and makes them tick? So with that, I'm going to pass it over to my co-presenter, Hanifa.
Thank you, Anita. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Hanifa Abdul-Sabor. I am based in Maryland, and I have been with College Wise for over 2 years now. I've been in and around higher education for over 15 years, the past several of those being in specifically this college admissions counseling space, but also I have also been an academic advisor on the college side as well. One of my favorite positions being at the George Washington University, where I worked with students in over 40 majors and over 300 students. So I saw them through a lot of major selection and also major changes, and I saw a lot of what was working for students and what wasn't. And a lot of that influences the way that I speak with students on this side of things about what those choices actually mean. So I'm very excited to dive into this with you. There's one of the things Anita and I like to talk about together and with the audience as well, based on our experiences. So it's always a good time to jump into these topics.
Great. So our agenda for tonight, we are going to start with some common myths and frequently asked questions that we get from our families. We're going to then talk a little bit about how to pick a major. And then we're really going to talk about the application process a little bit more, because that major is sometimes connected to an application and sometimes not. And you kind of have to make a few decisions along the way. So we'll talk about what it means to apply undecided and what it means to apply with a major. And then finally, we'll talk about some timelines and next steps. In particular, we're going to focus on rising juniors and what timeline they should be on, and the way we think about the timeline. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Hanifa again.
So when it comes to deciding on a major, a lot of times students and their families may experience a lot of uh, pressure, and a lot of that comes from certain assumptions about what it means for someone to choose a major in undergrad. I think the biggest assumption being that the whole success of the process, whether or not it was even worth it, was it worth the cost, was it worth the experience, is riding on the major itself. So before we dive more deeply into some of these ideas, I just want to quickly run through some of the common myths and frequently asked questions that we get about this. One of them is, does a major choice equal your career choice? My response to that is that typically it doesn't. For most people, it doesn't. And the reason for that is because when it comes to the college experience in your career pathway, a major is only one piece of it. There's so many other parts that make someone's career path. And I'll go into that a little more. However, I'll say now that most entry-level jobs do not have strict requirements for the major that a student has, only that they have completed an undergraduate program. So specifically here, we're talking about undergraduate majors. And because of this, most people do not end up in careers that strictly match their undergraduate majors. This is, a fun question to ask anyone, around you who's been in their career for quite some time. And if you follow the career path from whatever they decided to do in college, if they attended college, and what they're doing later on, for many, there's a difference there because their career is built upon much more than their undergraduate major. There are certain majors, and we'll talk more about this as well, there are certain majors that have a pretty direct pathway to their career path, but these majors are the majority the minority when you consider how many options there are out there. Next, we have, do certain majors lead to more lucrative careers? I will say some majors set you up for a more predictable career path. And I think that's what a lot of time people are looking for when it comes to planning for the future. They're looking for predictability. So they're like, I know that engineers tend to make this much money on average. We're going to study engineering. I know that nurses are making this much. We're going to major in nursing. And if that's a career path that you want to pursue, then that's a wise decision to major in those things. But there are also many other lucrative careers that can be made from almost any undergraduate major, because often the success of a career will depend on the skills and experiences that you develop in college and otherwise. And that will, carry with you across different career paths. The other reason as well is that there's so many different industries out there, so many different jobs out there, many of them that, make great money that don't have a directly correlating major, right? What does someone, we see a lot of CEOs that make a lot of money. Do they all have the same major? No, they do not. All these doctors, if you look it up, of course, people in the medical field show in the top rankings for lucrative incomes. But what a lot of people don't know is that to be pre-med, to be able to apply to medical school, there's no specific major that you're required to have. Certain courses, yes, but it's not limited to a specific major. So in a lot of ways, the major that you choose in undergraduate does not dictate how lucrative your future career will be for most people. The other thing is, often because of this idea that your major directly leads to a career, oftentimes there's the assumption that liberal arts is a useless avenue, or it's a useless type of school or educational experience to pursue. And one of the things that I often share about this, I actually chose to go to a liberal arts college for my undergraduate experience. I went to Swarthmore College outside of Philadelphia. And one of the things that I witnessed was that liberal arts is actually a great space to cultivate those transferable skills that set you up for success in your next career path, whatever it is. So when I talk about transferable skills, they're looking for people who can lead. They're looking for people who can gather and analyze information and apply them in practical ways. They're looking for people who are able to connect with others and to problem solve and all these other kinds of things. And what often happens in a liberal arts experience is that a major is really more so just a means of practicing applying those skills, along with many other opportunities that were there. And depending on the type of institution you go to, it can often be a great space for students to have the opportunity to access resources and opportunities, and experts in the field in a way that they may not be able to in a much larger institution where they're competing against graduate students. So this is one of those things where it depends on what you do with it, right? And so much of this is, as you'll see. The next one is, do majors matter in admissions? There's a couple of major ways in which your decision of what major to indicate in your applications will affect admissions. One of them is that it's a way for them to understand more about the student that's applying to the school. What are you coming here looking to do? What do you want to participate in? Depending on what else they see in your application in terms of your academics and in terms of your extracurricular activities, they may be knowing what major that you're hoping to pursue may help them to put the pieces together and understand your narrative a little more clearly. Another way that this information can be used is that when admissions officers are admitting students to their future classes and hoping to build their community of students, they want to build a balanced community. So having a general sense of the type of majors that students are applying to helps them to create a diverse incoming class as well. And all of that with the knowledge that a lot of times what people say they're interested in majoring in will often change once they're there and they have the opportunity to experience things academically and professionally that they never had before. Last one I wanted to address is, why do some colleges admit by major and not at all, not all of them? A lot of times this is an issue of space for a highly in demand major, like the ones that everyone knows about, right? Like engineering and nursing and things like that. When they admit by major and directly into a major program instead of just admitting you to the school and having you declare a major later on, like many others do, it's often due to those kind of practical considerations. You're more likely to see that at a larger public institution where they'll admit by major rather than a smaller or a private institution as well. Can you go to the next slide, Anita? So let's go a little bit further into what actually is even the role of the college major. A lot of times when people talk about college major, it's pretty much the only thing that they talk about. And one of the things that, I saw very clearly, not only as a student myself, but as an academic advisor, was that the major was just a small piece of this bigger picture that influenced what happened next for the student in terms of both their academic and their career pathway. So as an example, when I was an advisor at the George Washington University, there were 120 total credits that students had to complete in order to graduate from that particular institution. Those 120 credits comprised of the general education requirements of the majors, any minors if they chose them, and also elective courses. And out of those 120, majors were probably not more than maybe 40 credits, right? So what are they doing with all the rest of that time? Is the rest of that time a waste of time? And that depends on what you consider to be the purpose of a college education, the way that you understand the way that the other aspects beyond the major affect a student's career readiness. And so the general education or core requirement is about making sure that everyone has a basic level of breadth and not depth necessarily, but breadth of knowledge in different areas of disciplines, right? that students have basic skills in concrete thinking and analysis, and basic skills in understanding, literature, and then communication skills and understanding people, right? And then beyond that, we have the major, which is a way that people can then specialize and learn how to do a more targeted form of analysis, and going further in terms of building their understanding of a particular set of concepts and how to apply them, in particular. Electives and minors can be a way, they're not necessarily a waste. Most people have more than one interest, and oftentimes there's multiple dimensions to your interests, right? So, for example, I've had students who were uh, planning to go to medical school, and they had a major, they chose to have a major in biology, but they also had like a double major in like women's studies, or in a cultural studies, or in a language. And a lot of times what I hear from people who are on the, medical school side of things, is that these are attractive candidates because doctors need to do more than just understand the science. Doctors work with people all the time. They have to be able to understand and communicate with people. And so these are skills that are also valuable to that particular kind of student's career path, as an example. So electives can be a way to figure out what your major is going to be. It can be a way to supplement your major. It can be a way to be able to show future employers, future graduate schools, that you have chosen to also specialize in additional areas of knowledge. Then also there's, what are you doing outside of class? I would say most of your time is not in class, but that doesn't mean that it's not valuable time. So when students are in college, not only are they building a transcript, they're building a resume. And a lot of that comes from the way that they choose to be involved with their college community, um, through leadership and different activities. Sometimes it's through being involved with partnerships with organizations and communities outside of campus. And also there's all the professional organizations. The networking opportunities that come from college are huge. And so when we talk about the success and how the college experience correlates to future plans, a lot of that is about how students take advantage of opportunities like these outside of the class. And that includes also job and internships, how they use their summers as well, or co-op opportunities, for example. All of this works together to make it so that the student is working towards attaining certain skills and goals when it comes to not only specific knowledge, but also abilities in terms of their social skills, this life skills, and ability to connect with others. And that's why so many jobs may be looking for a bachelor's degree, but not necessarily specifying what major it is, because they expect that when a student comes out of an undergraduate experience, they've developed some of these skills. Anita, can you take me to the next slide? So let's talk about choosing a major. This number here, it looks a little bit dire, right? Nearly 2 in 5 college graduates reported that they regretted their selected major. And this can be for a lot of reasons. I personally see a lot of people choose a major because they think that they have to, or because they think that there's only 3 majors that are lucrative, right? They think they have to be an engineer, or they have to be a doctor, or it's just some kind of very limited idea they have, that they didn't allow themselves to explore other options, and potential career paths for themselves. And so this is a big theme that you probably hear a lot here, and throughout any of our counseling, is that always explore your options. There's always something that you just didn't know about, and that may be an even better fit for you and still help you to reach your more practical goals as well, which is nothing wrong with having those. So tips in terms of choosing your major is start with yourself. Always start with yourself in terms of understanding, what am I even trying to do? What is the kind of work that I can excel in and devote a significant amount of time to, and not be depleted by it, right? That would motivate me to do more and be the best in it, right? What kind of space do I want to be in? Do I want to be in a lab? Do I want to be reading texts a lot? Do I want to be, writing a lot? Or do I want to be building? And then also, once you have a sense of what your kind of priorities are, what will make you the best student and put you in the best position to demonstrate your skills. You want to explore your options. Often when we're doing research for colleges, students come in with an idea of what major they want to study. And I tell them, even though you know what major that you want to study, let's have you just kind of skim and look through the whole majors list. Because a lot of times there are majors that we have never even heard of. That's the most exciting thing about college. No matter what kind of high school you went to, there will be new subject matter, new possibilities in college that you just didn't have a chance to even look at before and consider. Or they may take something that you're interested in, combine it with another in a way you never thought about. They do that a lot with computer science, and it's just the most interesting thing. So allow yourself to explore your options that are out there. As it says, there are over 1,000 majors to choose from. Also, you'll want to determine your school options and what they offer. Every school does not offer the same options. And that means not only just in terms of number of majors they have, but also in terms of the number of, also in terms of the way that they may teach a specific major. So one of the things I tell the students is just because the school offers psychology and that school offers psychology does not mean that they're teaching it the same way. They may have, different specializations and learning opportunities that they have. So think about that too when you're thinking about the major you want to choose for the colleges that you would like to apply to. And then also just circling back to number one and just making sure that the decisions you're making align with what it is you're actually interested in doing and learning how to do, because that's the way that you'll be the most successful. Next slide, please. So one of the things that a lot of, I see a lot of students afraid to do is to apply undecided. They think it feels like it'll tell the colleges that this is a student that doesn't know what they want and, doesn't seem reliable, like they're about anything. And, that's not necessarily the case. I think I applied undecided myself. I've had students apply undecided successfully. And really what it's about is understanding that just because you're applying undecided does not mean that you don't have a point of view or a narrative, right? As a 17-year-old, no one really expects most of them to know exactly what they want to do for all of college, let alone for the rest of their lives. But the way to approach this is to talk about what you do know, right? So instead of focusing on, I don't know a specific major, the odds are that you have certain interests that you are interested in, that you're passionate about, that you're curious about. And oftentimes there are themes to that, right? So you may not know exactly what major you want to do, but you know it's something in STEM. And there's just something about those sciences and those maths that really fascinate you about figuring out how things work, right? And so when admissions officers can read that about you in your personal statements and things like that, they know something more about what type of student and person that you are. Being honest about your journey, I think, can really work in your favor if you choose to focus on your strengths in that process. So, for example, I had a student who successfully applied to Swarthmore, and their whole, as undecided, and their whole essay was just about the journey of learning about different things and the journey between these different type of subject matter and ideas and seeing how they connected and how that was something that was very exciting and defining about that student as a person. So really embracing what your story is and what the strengths of it is can be really a really compelling application. The other thing is that you want to be as strong as possible in all areas of your application that you can be, right? Be the best, give them the best transcript that you can, be strong in the activities that you do choose to engage in. And, try to work on having those stellar teacher recommendations. And also you want to make sure that your narrative is consistent, right? So if you're applying undecided, you want to make sure that what you say in your essays and what you show in different areas is matching up with whatever your particular narrative is, whatever your themes are that you're showing about yourself and who you are as a student, as a person. Next slide. So when you're accepted as an undecided student, the research kind of never ends in the application process. You'll want to still continue to observe your options. Usually you have until sophomore year of college to make your final decision. So what you'll want to do is, use what you know, right? A lot of times, there's certain things you're not interested in. There's certain things, certain areas you're definitely interested in. And then you want to go in and take advantage of every opportunity that you have. Take the courses, use your general education requirements to help you to explore different options, and kind of weed things out, right? You'll be meeting requirements and also moving closer to honing in on what your major is. Take advantage of workshops and, opportunities to speak with people in different fields in order to help guide your decision. And also knowing when you're making your final decision about which college to apply to, knowing which majors won't be available to you that maybe might have been an option for you as you end up making that decision. And now I'm going to pass it on to Anita.
Great. Thanks, Hanifa. So Hanifa talked a lot about if you're undecided and what you need to do. I will say that I always tell students it's better to be undecided than super decided. I love when students really keep their eyes open, keep their ears peeled, just make sure that you're looking around. I've seen too many students say, I am going to do this. And then they get laser sharp focus. And then for some reason that thing doesn't work out. And then they've never looked at plan B. So I'm just going to tell you right now, it's always better to look around, be a little undecided, just keep exploring, even if you do know what you want to do, because there might be some other things that will either complement what you want to do, or that you might need to change your mind for whatever reason that comes up. And there can be so many different things. So with that, I'm going to move on to applying with a major. Sorry, my cursor's slow here. So what happens when you know that you do want to have a certain major as a high school student? Like I said, always keep a plan B, but in the application process, it's really, really important to, more than anything else, connect the dots for an admissions officer. They really want to see that you've explored something and that you've been successful doing that. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples for evidence that you can put in your application. Let's say you want to be a computer science major. You've taken a computer science class, maybe AP computer science, maybe programming, whatever it is, and you've done well in that class. That will stand out to an admissions officer who's reading your application and says, oh, well, they said computer science and they've taken classes. Great. If your school doesn't offer classes, maybe there's still something else that you've done, maybe on your own. Maybe there's, you're learning something through Coursera or EDX class to learn how to program or do something else. Maybe you're involved in robotics at your school, and that's a way that you've been learning some programming. Whatever it is, they need to see that evidence that you have explored. Another great way is to get a job. I talk to a lot of high school students who spend a lot of time doing academic work, and parents think the academic work is the most important. It is, but it's also really, really important for students to get that experience outside of class, as Hanifa said earlier, with being in college. That curriculum, part of your learning happens outside of the classroom. And getting a job is often the best way to see if you really like a field or not. And it doesn't really matter what the job is. Obviously, if it's connected to something you enjoy, that's better, but you're going to be building skills no matter what job you have. So for instance, I will tell you, I've had very successful computer science applicants. I'm going to use computer science a lot, just because it's on my mind today, who have taught. I had a student who taught older adults about computers at his local library, and he did very well in the college process. I've had students who've taught younger kids at places like the Coder School or Code Ninjas or whatnot. I've had students who've worked at summer camps and taught kids. So think about, what's out there and what you can take advantage of, and then make sure that appears on your application as a way of showing evidence that you've explored and you've been successful and that you know what you're talking about. Admissions officers do not like when you talk in these big abstracts and just say, well, I would like to do computer science and, or I want to be a doctor and I want to change the world. Like that doesn't cut it. You really need to say something a little bit more specific that is personal to you. And all of that will show up either on your activities list or probably somewhere in your essays, or maybe on your transcript, excuse me. And that's how they're going to see that you have that evidence. You should know that some majors have some different criteria. They might ask for higher GPAs or higher test scores, or maybe they want a certain type of letter of recommendation, or they might want some extra essays in the application. So a great example of this is MIT. They always say they want a humanities teacher to give one of the recommendations. And that is a very particular requirement from MIT. They do not just want to see the science and math recommendations. They think it's really important that people are well-rounded, that they have some written and verbal skills. And so they're asking some of those English teachers or foreign language teachers or social studies teachers for some recommendations. And that's important for you to know as you're applying to those schools. Read the admissions requirements really clearly. They're always listed online on the admissions webpage, and it's really important that you get it right because admissions officers want you to follow their directions, and you want to follow their directions so that you're getting your best foot forward. One thing I will say is that some majors are more selective than others. We know right now, computer science, business, and engineering are the most selective majors. There's just a huge amount of demand for those particular areas, and there's not enough teachers, to be quite honest, or sometimes lab spaces for students who want those majors. So you should know that it's important to be honest in the application and say, like, this is what I want to do, and to have a backup plan. But don't ever try to go through the back door, as we say. You don't want to say, oh yeah, I'm going to be a French major, and then try to switch in to some of these more competitive majors, because it often does not work. They have very limited capacity at the most selective majors. And so if you don't get in that first time through the admissions process, it might be that you can't transfer into that later because they're at capacity. So please don't try to play that game. It really doesn't work. All right, next slide. So when you are creating this application for yourself and you're applying with a major, again, how have you explored that major? And how have you been successful? And really, truly anything can work here. I've had students who say, oh, I want to do business, but I haven't done anything that's business related. Well, sometimes talking about, you know, how collaborative business is, and maybe you love doing group projects, maybe you love doing presentations. A lot of business majors have to do those two particular things, very collaborative, and they have to do a lot of presentations. So you can sometimes highlight skills that are not necessarily in that particular field, but skills that you have that can apply to that field. And that is both for a major and a career later on. That's an important thing to have, talk about those transferable skills. Again, you're trying to connect the dots for admissions reader here. So, you know, how have you explored? What did you enjoy about it? Tell them a little story. They really want to hear from you and your personal life experience. One of the other things you can do is talk about what do you hope to do with that major? So, sorry, I'm going to go back to computer science for a second, but one of the things I always tell my students is computer science is a tool for something else. You know, what is that problem that you want to solve in the world? What is something that lights you up? What is that, you know, field of interest? And how are you going to use computer science for that? In the same way that writing is a tool for something else. What do you like to write about? What are the things that you want to study so that you can be a writer? Are you going to be a journalist? Are you going to be writing nonfiction? Are you going to be writing fictional stories? So you kind of have to have some ideas of direction that you're going in. You don't necessarily know the exact major or your exact career. No one can predict those things, but think about what direction you want to go into and talk about that on your application, because that can be very, very strong evidence to someone that you've been thoughtful about what you want to do. I'm going to give you another example for a second. People always say they want to do business, and sometimes I think business is like the new undecided. People don't want to say they're undecided, so they say business, but really business is such a broad range of things. It's like everything from finance and sales to marketing and entrepreneurship. There's so many fields within business. But maybe you have this idea that one day you have this product that you want, you know, and maybe talk about that and talk about that's what's leading you towards business. And that future aspiration can really help convince an admissions officer. Another thing is, you know, you want to tie your interest to that particular school. And a lot of schools will say, what do you want to major in and why do you want to major in that at our school? And so you're going to have to give some specific evidence. You really need to do your homework on colleges before you apply. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to apply to a bunch of schools and like hope it works out. You really need to do a little bit of research. There are 4,000 institutions out there, 4,000 in the US alone. About 2,000 of those are community colleges, so 2-year colleges, and about 2,000 of those are 4-year colleges. There's a lot of variety. And there is nothing worse than when an admissions officer reads an essay that says, well, I want to do such and such major. And the admissions officer says, huh, we don't offer that major here. I wonder, is this a generic essay that they're writing? They like you to be a little more specific. You want to do something at, let's say, UPenn. UPenn is known for being just very advanced technologically. They always want to be these innovators. So you need to show them that you've done that research, you've done that homework, you know what their mission is about, and incorporate that somehow in your application. The last thing I will say is go above requirements. So again, I'm going to go back to business for a second and say, a lot of people will say, well, pre-calculus is the minimum that I need to go into a business program. But guess what? Business is really competitive and they really do want to see the calculus. People tell me all the time, well, no, I only need stats. I don't need calculus, but it depends what kind of program you're applying to. And some of the more competitive programs do want to see the calculus. And you might tell me like, I'm going to go into marketing. I don't need, the higher level math. And that's fine, but just find a program that matches that. Don't go for a higher level program if you're not planning to take some of those harder level classes. Okay, so that's applying with a major. Now, this is the big $1 million question that our staff grapples with, that everyone around there grapples with. Which schools admit by major and which ones will let you be undecided? Not all schools are transparent about it. So I'm going to talk about the ones that are transparent. Most of the big universities, especially the big state universities, the University of California system, the University of Texas system, the Big 10 schools, I always like to joke, the Big 10 school has 18 schools in it. But anyway, those are the big Midwestern schools and some on the East Coast that have, they're known for their big football programs. But some of those larger universities, you do have to tell them what you might major in. And the reason is because they're huge schools. They want to make sure that they don't go over capacity. They really want to make sure that people graduate within 4 years. And, if they don't have enough classes to teach, all the future English majors, then they're going to be, they're going to get a lot of blowback, I guess, from families that are like, well, we are going here because we thought we could finish this major in 4 years. I don't want to spend more time or more money. So some of those big schools will really ask you. University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign is very transparent. And they will say, put your first choice major. One of their questions on the application is, what is your first choice major and why? Like, why do you want to do this? Very specific, in 150 words. It's really, really tricky to do. The second question is, what do you want to do with your career? Like, what are some of your aspirations? So very specific, targeted questions, and they admit by major. If there are some majors that get full very fast, they will ask you to put a second choice down. And we know that sometimes the second choice majors must be less competitive than your first choice. So in particular, going back to computer science, sorry about that. I always tell my students, never, ever, ever put computer science down as your second choice major because you will never get it. If your first choice major is full, computer science will definitely be full by the time they get to you as your second choice major. So it's important to be a little strategic. I often tell my students, like, let's put together a little bit of it's an Excel spreadsheet, basically, which schools you're applying to, your first choice major, second choice major. And, sometimes you don't get your first choice major at your first choice school. So you got to be a little strategic and say, like, what's more important, the major or the school? So certain majors, like I said, are super competitive. So I wrote business, engineering, computer science. Those are the top 3 right now. And especially at the bigger universities, those are particularly competitive because I said they don't have enough space. Then we have a bunch of schools that really don't care what your major is. You can go in undecided and just explore. So liberal arts colleges, which Hanifa talked about earlier on, and I know there are a couple of questions about what's a liberal arts college. A liberal arts college, generally you can, how do I put it? Liberal arts are the more traditional majors. And there are lots of liberal arts colleges in this country that have those traditional majors. You can major in science. Usually they have like what I call three big areas: humanities, which is a lot of the music, the art, the language; the social sciences, which is your history, philosophy, psychology, anthropology; and then your sciences and math. So the usual biology, chemistry, physics, math type majors. So a lot of the big universities have liberal arts colleges within them, but then they might also have other colleges, like they might have an engineering college, which is not considered liberal arts. It's a little bit more pre-professional, I would say. It's a little bit more hands-on, a little bit more practical, dare I say. But liberal arts colleges generally in the country, they will let you come in. They might ask you, like, what are you excited about? But they generally don't admit by major. They just want to have some sense of like, what are your interests? General studies, a lot of the big universities have general studies, and it just means that you go in, you get a special advisor who will help you choose a major and figure out what the options are. Some schools call it exploratory studies. There's some really, really great programs out there with great advising. You get to take some classes with some other people who are maybe a little bit undecided, and you get to have some conversations about how you're going to decide. And they can put you in touch with other resources, whether it's faculty mentors or other students or different types of internships or jobs. And that's a great way to go to a university and really figure out what the options are. The last one I put on here is community colleges. We're seeing more and more students thinking about community college. You go for 2 years, you don't know what you want to go to college for. You take those basic general education requirements at community college. And then you go to you can transfer to a 4-year university, and you'll have done the basic requirements while you're also exploring. Community colleges tend to be much less expensive than 4-year schools. So if for some students, that is the right path. One thing I always tell students, if you are going to go to community college and you think you're going to transfer, think about where you might transfer to, and then try to work with your academic advisor at community college so that you are doing those requirements for that particular 4-year university. So in particular, I'm in the state of Illinois. A lot of our community colleges have what we call, oh God, I forgot the name of it now. They basically have partnerships with 4-year colleges, and the 4-year colleges will say, yes, if the student meets certain requirements, we will automatically transfer them into our university after they finish the community college. So that's an important one. So again, this data is not transparent. As college counselors, we struggle a little bit. We know which schools don't admit by major, and some schools are very honest and open, like the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, that they say that they do admit by major. But other schools, it's a little bit of a mix, and we don't always know. Okay, application. What we want to say here is when you're choosing things that you want to do, 9th grade, just do it all. You know, anything that looks interesting, go for it. And then as you get older, you might say, oh, well, I don't like this as much. So, you know, cross some things off the list. The best way, I think, to be undecided sometimes is to figure out what you don't want, even if you can't figure out what you do want, because knowing what you don't want can help you be a little more, what's the word? It'll just help you find a direction. And then in 10th grade, you want to kind of, you know, pare down a little bit, focus a little bit more. 11th grade, again, a little bit more focus. You really don't have to decide on a major in high school. And even if you decide in high school, you might change your mind in college. It's normal and it's fine to do. One piece of advice that I will give you is that if you're super undecided, I often tell students, do you think science or non-science is going to be your path? If you think that there's any plan for science in your future, any possibility of doing science in your future, I tell students, stay on that track, do the math, do the science, stay on that track, because you can always switch out of science. Let's say you start off as an engineer, you want to decide, oh, no, I don't like engineering, I'm going to go be a philosophy major, easy enough. But once you start down the non-science path, it's really hard to go back to science. So you say, I'm going to be a history major, and then you start doing these history classes, but then you've missed sort of the basic level math and science classes, and it's hard to get back into that very structured program. So that's one thing I will say is good advice. All right. Couple other little things. So the last slide is about 9th through 11th graders. Rising seniors. Right now, we are super, super busy with our juniors. This is a great time to reach out, if you need some help. We at CollegeWise do this all the time. And what we often say is there are certain pieces that you want to get done earlier and some certain things you can do later. So in particular, we work very hard with our juniors right now and into the summer, spring of junior into the summer, helping them build lists. It's really, really important that they have balanced lists with a few likely schools, a few target schools, and a few reach schools. And we're really helping students think about how to do that research. A lot of students in sophomore, junior year will go take visits, which is great. We love that. Just make sure that you are taking some good notes, because some of those schools will ask you later on the application, why do you want to apply to this particular school? And that's great to have notes where you can then go back and say like, oh, these are the things that I noticed at that school. The second thing is common application. So about 1,000 of the 2,000 four-year schools out there, so about a half of the four-year schools out there will accept the common application. You can start an account at any point. Every August 1st or July 31st, it rolls over and they will essentially clean house, and anyone who's been admitted to college or has graduated from high school is cleaned out of the system, but underclassmen, 9th, 10th, or 11th graders will have access to that same Common App account. Some people like to sign in and just see like, oh, what kinds of questions do they ask? I tell my 11th graders, start working on the Common App now. It's not hard. It's like basic demographic information for the first few steps. What's your name? Where's your address? What do your parents do? What are their names, etc. But it's just a time sucker. So, if there are things that you can do ahead of time, go for it. I will say only your personal information from Common App, if you do it now, will roll over. If you add any college information, that will not roll over. And that's because colleges will update their section of Common App in the summer. By August 1st, they're supposed to. The other things that we put on here, ask for letters of recommendation. If you're a current junior, that's a great thing to ask for right now. And then you can also fill out your activities section. Sorry, I'm looking at my second screen for the what's going on. Test scores. We know that only, I heard a stat today, only 4% of colleges are requiring test scores. I might be able to list them off. They are usually the military academies, Purdue, MIT, some of the public schools in Georgia, some of the public schools in Florida. The list is kind of ever changing, but there's really only a small handful that are requiring test scores. I encourage all my students to take a test. If you do well, submit your score. If you don't, you can either take it again or just skip the score and apply to a test optional school. That's a whole other long conversation, but if you ever want to talk about that, we have some other webinars on that one in particular. And the last thing is essays. So I try to tell my juniors, if you can finish your college list, your Common App, finish testing by the end of junior year, then you're well ahead of the curve. And then the last part is this essay piece. And we often tell our students, please finish those, at least the main personal statement or the Common App essay or the college essay in the summer, so that you can be better set for the fall. And then that way there's always a lot to work on, but these are just our common beliefs of the things that rising juniors should be doing right now. All right, with that, I see Theo's back and he's going to talk a little bit about some other pieces here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anita and Hanifa, for the wonderful presentation. I definitely learned a lot. And I know everyone did as well, because we had a lot of questions come through. But before that, I'd like to spend a little bit more time just talking about next steps for people and families that are interested in working with us, and just to talk a little bit more about CollegeWise. So just go to the next slide. So at CollegeWise, we have a number of services. We help families and students through the application process by developing application strategies. We also help navigate the college research and school selection. We also have fantastic essay support with a strong team that worked with many students that apply to a lot of different colleges in the United States. We also provide a lot of project management guidance and also test prep tutoring support through our great team as well. We're really a one-stop shop for all your family counseling needs that help your team feel more confident in the college application journey. And it gives you, the parent, the opportunity to relieve yourselves from any project management responsibilities and say goodbye to any of the confusion of college admissions with our support. So with that being said, if your family is eager to work with us, I'm going to drop a link down in the chat where you'll be able to schedule a quick consultation with one of our program advisors just to learn a little bit more about our programs and our services and to answer any questions you might have. And actually, for a limited time, our program advisors have opened their availability up to accommodate for the recent influxes of juniors. So to ensure your family gets a priority in terms of counselor selection and don't get behind on college application prep, go ahead and just snag your spot now. So go ahead and go to the next slide real quick. I'll also like to drop our last poll of the night. And this poll is just to gauge on if you are interested in working with us as well. And by answering yes to this poll, we'll actually have someone from our team reach out for just a short call and just to get started on your journey. But yeah, without that being said, I'll go ahead and jump into our Q&A. So for our first question, either for Hanifa or Anita, once a student is admitted and they want to change a major, can they change to any other major without any limitations? And what are the pros and cons of changing a major?
Take that one. So it depends on the school and type of program that you were admitted to. So if you were admitted to a college where you did not have a direct admission into a major, you usually have until your sophomore year to declare a major. And typically there's procedures in place for you to be able to change your major. And that's a thing where individual cases, you should work with your academic advisor. I'm always going to tell people that since I've been one, to just figure out what that means in terms of your requirements and how long that would take you. But that's something that is typically feasible in a situation. Things to consider is that if you're looking to change to a major in another school, then that's not something that you should take for granted that you would be able to do. So, for example, if you are coming in as an English major and you want to transfer to engineering, and that's in another college within the university, different schools have different policies on that, and how difficult or easy it is will depend on the schools. That's called internal transfer, and that's something that you can look up. When you're researching colleges, you can look up that information about what it would take to be able to do that. For if you're being in a direct admit situation, it can be much more difficult to make those kinds of changes. And again, those policies vary by the schools. Pros and cons, the biggest thing for you to just consider is if in changing a major, you have new requirements that may require you to take more time to switch them. It just depends on when you're doing it and how many credits you've already completed by that time.
Awesome. So another question is, how can students avoid spending so many years on a major that they don't end up liking?
It's really important, I guess. All of the literature says that students need to know two things as they're choosing a major or choosing a career. Know yourself and know your options. Now, knowing your options means like doing some research, digging right in. Knowing yourself is actually the harder part, and it's actually the more important part. So what are your strengths? What are your values? What are your interests? What lights you up? What gets you motivated? What are the kinds of problems you want to solve in the world? And so what I tell students is you got to dig deep and really figure out who you are. And that will help you, that will help inform what kind of major you might pick. And it'll help you inform you to choose the right major for yourself. I think there are a lot of people out there who choose a major because they've heard it's a good major, it will get them a career, or because someone else is doing it, or because their parents say they should do it, and they don't do it for themselves. And so if you do a lot of internal exploration first, you're more bound to figure out. And I always say explore, 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 explore in any which way you can. Shadow different types of professionals if you can, try different types of jobs, and just see what you like. Talk to different people. My kids hate me because I talk to everyone. But you know, you learn a lot when you talk to people. You can even browse LinkedIn profiles to see like what are the different types of things that people are doing and what looks interesting to you.
Absolutely. And I thought this question was actually really interesting as well, because I know there's a lot of majors out there and it's super hard to choose from. Is having a dual major valuable? And by declaring a multiple majors, will it help with college admissions?
So, typically when it comes to the admissions piece, they'll ask you your major that you're interested in, then maybe like a second and third choice. Um, I think that, you know, in those instances, it can be helpful to put the second and third choices if they're asking you for them. Because usually that means that there, you know, might be some consideration about availability for majors. However, in terms of the question about the value of a dual major, that totally depends on the student. So if they are, it depends on what their goals are and what they're trying to accomplish by that. Is one of those majors one in a potential field of interest for you where having a major in that particular field is required for a path that you want? So, for example, the engineering, maybe if you want to be a psychologist someday, psychology or something like that. It's really about ultimately what are your goals? What are you trying to get out of the experience? And what kind of time and space do you have in your schedule when you're, you know, when you're in your college journey?
Absolutely. Another question we had, um, will doing an associate degree from a community college help or hurt college admissions?
It depends on the school, but for most schools, they really like to see the associate's degrees. There's in the University of California system, they really do pride themselves on taking a lot of students from the California community colleges. In Illinois, it's the same thing. So yeah, and we used to have someone who worked at admissions offices at a couple of highly selected places, and they did want to take some students who had those associate's degrees. Yeah, like I said earlier, the most important thing is if you have a four-year college in mind and you want to start with an associate's degree, just try to work backwards a little bit and talk to the advisors at both places so that you're taking the classes that will fulfill both the associate's degree and also your general education requirements at that four-year institution.
Mhm. And we're actually almost at the end of our webinar. And before we really dive into our last question of the evening, I want to thank those that have already scheduled for our free consultation with us. We've already had like 6 families scheduled over the next few days. So I really thank you for that. I'm actually going to drop the link down again just to see if there's any other families still interested in scheduling a call. You can go ahead and book it right now in the link below. But with that being said, our last question of the night. We had a lot of people ask this as well, but what majors are best for pre-health or pre-law tracks?
So I had a lot of fun as an academic advisor telling people that they don't have to have a specific major. So a lot of times when it comes to pre-med, people choose biology or chemistry. And that's because, well, one, they think they have to, but two, there are a set of courses that students have to take in order to qualify for med school, right? So there's pre-med courses that they should make sure they take no matter what major they end up being in. A lot of times people say, well, it's just going to be easier for me, right? It's the biology courses, chemistry, you know, some physics and mathematics. And a lot of times those are part of the basic requirements for a biology or chemistry major anyway. And so they're like, let's just fold these things together. Some people are genuinely interested in it, right? But you can have, as I mentioned before, with the example of when I was at GW and the 120 credits, it's very possible for you to have a major in something else and still fulfill your pre-med requirements and more. So there's not a particular major you have to have. Think about your narrative for your undergraduate application, but think about your narrative for your medical school application later on. when they're also going to want to know more about who you are as a person and what can you offer beyond the science, the basic science of being a doctor. And then for pre-law, similarly, you can apply any major to law school. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be English, it doesn't have to be political science. There's all kinds of law out there and all kinds of ways to apply legal knowledge. So think about, not only your interest in law, but what you want to do with it. And maybe there's another major that could be a good supplement to your intentions to further pursue study of the law.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So unfortunately, we are at time. I really like to thank Anita and Hanifa for the wonderful presentation. But if you did enjoy our session, we do host weekly webinars every week, which you can register on our website. We really hope you enjoyed our session and found it helpful. But besides that, I hope you guys have a great evening. Bye.